Do you agree with Justine Greening that the only way to break the deadlock on Brexit is actually just to have a second referendum?
The only people who want a second referendum are people who want us to keep on voting until we vote to stay in the European Union. And this is the sort of Irish and Danish model, that you don't like the result and therefore you make people vote again until they give you the right answer. We've had effectively 3 votes on leaving the European Union. We had the general election where David Cameron promised a referendum. We had the referendum itself, and then the general election last year where both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party committed to implementing the result of the referendum. I think voting until you get the result the establishment want is not particularly democratic.
Well, given you say we've had these 3 votes, we had a referendum, we've had all these mandates given in manifestos, why have we got a Prime Minister and a government that's not planning to deliver Brexit?
Well, I think this has emerged over the last few days, both in briefings given to members of Parliament and in the Prime Minister's interview with Andrew Marr, at the point at which she said lots of people had voted with their heart, and that what she had to do basically was implement it with her head. Now, people like me who have long favoured leaving the European Union think that being outside it is a great advantage, will be economically better for us, and so on, and that the only people who think leaving is this great disruption economically are people who always backed Remain. And it is difficult that you've got people in charge who backed Remain.
Well, you say it is difficult. David Davis's former Chief of Staff, Stuart Jackson, a former Tory MP, yesterday accused Number 10 of a long-planned coup d'etat by the establishment. You've said that Theresa May, in an interview on Sunday Politics on BBC yesterday, said she's a Remainer who has remained a Remainer. Do you honestly, seriously believe that Theresa May and this cabal of civil servants in Number 10, that this government, this Remain-dominated cabinet, can deliver Brexit, a meaningful Brexit that Leave voters would consider as what they actually voted for in 2016?
I think it's not impossible. I think what the Prime Minister set out in her Mansion House speech is a compromise that both Remainers and Leavers accepted at the time, gets us out of the European Union comprehensively. There are some bits of it that I wouldn't have chosen, but they're not unreasonable. And so I think it's possible, but I don't think Chequers does it. So it's a policy that needs to be changed.
And the aim of your Eurosceptic group, the European Research Group, is very much change the policy, not the leader. If Theresa May won't change the policy, then what do you do?
Well, then it comes to votes in Parliament, and the question is, will the Prime Minister have a majority in Parliament for the Chequers deal? And it looks as if she doesn't. That yesterday Peter Mandelson came out to say that it was a very bad deal as proposed under Chequers, and that indicates that the pro-European wing of the Labour Party doesn't like it. Normally the opposition votes against things because that's what oppositions do. If there isn't sufficient support within the Conservative Party, this deal will not get through the House of Commons.
And then what happens?
And then we have to have another deal, or we leave on WTO terms. And leaving on WTO terms means we trade with the European Union in the way we trade with the rest of the world, which is nearly 60% of our trade, and that we don't have to pay them £39 billion. So it's nothing to be fearful about.
Well, the Prime Minister, in her interview on Andrew Marr yesterday on the BBC, seemed to make it quite clear that no deal was worse than a bad deal. I mean, she kept saying the words, no deal is better than a bad deal. But actually, in her other statements, she made it quite clear that was her biggest fear, and she would actually go ahead with pretty much any deal. I mean, the message has gone out to Michel Barnier and the rest of the European Commission. Have a field day, demand what you want. The Prime Minister's going to give in to it.
It's unfortunate that this should be the approach, that if you look at what the Prime Minister was saying about the negotiating position, if the EU says they don't like it, we immediately scuttle off and say, well, we won't ask for that then. That isn't a sensible way to negotiate. It gives your interlocutor an upper hand.
But she's done that.
Well, then she must undo it, that the policy needs to go back to where it was at the Mansion House, and it needs to be made clear to the EU that they don't get £39 billion unless we get a respectable trade deal, which is what we want out of this.
And yet ministers and officials in the Brexit department, have basically hinted that, for all intents and purposes, that £39 billion is no strings attached. They're going to get that either way.
That won't get through Parliament either. No opposition MP will vote for the government, I wouldn't have thought, to give away the best part of £40 billion on no guarantee of any future trade deal, and I won't vote for that, and a lot of my friends in the House of Commons won't vote for that on the Conservative benches. That's not a sensible thing to do, that's our key negotiating card, and to give it away for free would be letting down the British taxpayer.
The Prime Minister's given away everything else for free, though, hasn't she?
Well, that's got to stop. Negotiations aren't complete, and our constitutional system means that the executive has to get what it wants passed by Parliament, and if it's a very bad deal, it won't get through Parliament.
In terms of what happens today, there's going to be votes on various amendments that you and other Eurosceptic MPs have tabled to the Trade and Customs Bill. What do you believe is going to happen there?
I don't know. You never do know until the government decides what amendments it will accept, if any, and we will find that out later. And we've got a meeting of the ERG early in the afternoon where we will discuss how the day will proceed from our point of view. But I think we have significant support, and the government would be wise to allow the amendments which would improve the bill.
If the Prime Minister did have to back down on her Chequers agreement or on the Brexit white paper after losing 2 cabinet ministers over this and a number of junior ministers and bag carriers and ministerial aides, would she have any authority left? Would she not have to go just because she has relinquished all authority?
No, I think the willingness to change one's mind is a sign of strength rather than weakness, that people don't always get things right the first time, and I think it is sensible to say a politician who has looked at the facts, looked at the parliamentary arithmetic and decided that a policy is impossible is a wise politician rather than a foolish one.
After the 2017 doomed election campaign, 2 of her closest aides were forced out. They had to resign, take responsibility for that. Do you think that Ollie Robbins, who was seconded from the Brexit department to work in Number 10 as the Prime Minister's Brexit advisor, who surely must be playing a major role in the drawing up of this white paper and the Chequers agreement? It certainly wasn't David Davis playing a role in that. Do you think that he has to fall on his sword and go, even though he's a civil servant, that actually his services are no longer needed?
I wouldn't pick on individual civil servants. This is the policy of the Prime Minister that she pushed through the Cabinet. The responsibility is the Prime Minister's, not Mr. Robbins or any other individual civil servant.
And if you had to put your house on it, not inconsiderable house, by the way, Jacob Rees-Mogg is a father of 6. One of your houses, actually, more specifically. Do you think we're going to get Brexit?
Yes, I think we're going to get Brexit. I think the country voted for it, the country expects it. Any MP who's been out campaigning over the weekend will know how very strong the feeling remains to deliver on what people voted for. And this comes not just from people who voted to leave, but also from people who voted remain, who feel that democracy is very important, and if the country decides to do something, it must be implemented.